Thank you so much, Arnab, for having me here. I cannot tell you how good I feel to speak in between two very eminent personalities, Ambassador who just now spoke, Tariq Karim, and Professor Vishwas. And both of them are very important personality for me because both of them has been always very, very encouraging on whatever I am doing related to Brahmaputra. One thing that I want to share, I was so fortunate that I heard firsthand from from Tariq Karim, Ambassador Tariq Karim, about how he negotiated for the Ganges Treaty. And I don't think anyone has heard that. And so that was how, I mean, it was a very nice relationship that we shared through the Brahmaputra Dialogue Project. And even Professor Vishwas and Cecilia attended our dialogue in Singapore. So it's an extreme, I mean, it's a privilege actually to be speaking here. I would also like to actually thank and congratulate Tejaswini for the excellent presentation because I feel it is very, very difficult to bring so many things together into one presentation and still making sense, what you want to say. So I think it was very nicely done. Many of the points that you actually mentioned, we did realize those points when we were actually running the dialogue, and I'm sure Ambassador Tariq Karim would agree with me. One of the points that you mentioned is about trust deficit. As you will see, the data sharing is already happening, but the problem is we don't move beyond that. That is the biggest problem. We somehow get stuck there. So what I'm thinking is that I'm going to, look at your presentation, and I'm going to take a little bit of a, critical lens so that it can help you in moving ahead as well. Is that so let me just begin by situating the Brahmaputra not just as a river. It's a transboundary socio-ecological system that connects China, India, Bangladesh, and sustains, as Ambassador mentioned, millions of people through livelihoods, culture, and ecosystems. And this particular keynote that you made, it shows us very powerfully that how river is changing through intensifying floods, sediment, volatility, and also increasingly unpredictable behavior. And how much of this transformation is actually happening below the surface. That's what is very interesting in your presentation. And so what I want to focus on is in my intervention is that what this means for governance and cooperation. And it's not very, very nice time as of now. The time is not great to talk about regional cooperation, but like we cannot, of course, give up as well. But my central point is very simple, that the Brahmaputra governance challenge is not only actually about lack of data, but about how data, power, risk, and responsibilities, are negotiated across borders. So then we need to ask, we do have several governance framework, but why these existing governance frameworks are failing? So if we look at how Brahmaputra is currently governed, we see that most framework, of course, remain surface focused, as you rightly mentioned, and also very much event driven. And that's the biggest issue. And I completely agree. Governance still responds to floods after they occur rather than, anticipating risk. And climate change has fundamentally altered the river's behavior. Floods are no longer just more frequent, they are more uncertain. Sediment loads are changing, channels are migrating, and of course, erosion is accelerating. And these changes, it's not only just producing economic damage, and I think that's something is so important for us to, bring out, is that it is also generating a lot of non-economic losses and damage irrespective of in which part of the country you are talking about. Loss of land, loss of identity, loss of cultural landscape. There are chronic displacement. There are long-term livelihood erosion, and mostly downstream. Either it is Assam or it is Bangladesh. And yet governance mechanisms still unfortunately prioritize infrastructure, flow regulation, hydrological data, while risk, vulnerability, life loss kind of remain marginal. And this somehow, I feel, disconnect. This is one of the core governance failure in the basin. So I do see that UDA is an opportunity, but I'll also say that, but it's not like a silver bullet, this is where actually UDA or underwater domain awareness becomes definitely important. But from the governance perspective, what I feel is that this matters also because you mentioned, if there is transparency in data, it actually also brings more trust. So technical uncertainty is often used as a political justification as well for delay or inaction. So I do see that UDA has the potential to shift cooperation actually from a reactive crisis management to anticipatory governance. And also, as Ambassador mentioned, it is not so visible. It really helps. But please, we have to also remember data alone does not guarantee cooperation, because South Asia already has examples where data sharing agreements exist, yet trust remains fragile. So the real question is not just whether we generate better data, but who controls it, who interprets it, who bears the consequences of decisions based on it. And that is where I feel that we have to move from, and as was also mentioned in the keynote, from a technical coordination, like the way we have Joint River Commission, to a political economy kind of a lens as well. So if UDA is treated again, like every other intervention is, as a purely technical solution, then it will reproduce existing asymmetries. So we could end up with highly sophisticated monitoring system upstream, while downstream communities continue to experience repeated loss and damage. So, it is also about so many things, about residual risk, limits to adaptation, so many other things also comes into the picture. So this is why I think Brahmaputra governance must be connected to all of these, particularly moving away just from a very narrow technocratic focus to a larger economy, environment, and social focus. And all of these also matters in infrastructure planning. And I think UDA can support better decision, but governance determines again whether those decisions are equitable. Now, coming to the regional cooperation, what could change? So again, I think UDA does open a real opportunity for cooperation through joint monitoring node, shared sediment, morphology dashboard, many things. Now with AI and ML today, you can do so many things, and this can actually also help create shared knowledge, and which is so important for risk trust building. And this is something we also tried to do during our dialogue, is that it's not just about having dialogues, it is also, can countries have a common platform where knowledge can be shared, knowledge can be generated? Because when you do that, when you all know what science is talking about, your trust is also, it also enhances the trust. So it is very important that the cooperation moves beyond just bilateral technical committees towards more like a basin-wide multi-scholar governance, and it does not always have to be at track one level. It can always start from people to people connect, and then you start moving up to track 1.5 and also finally to track 1. This also requires, very importantly, acknowledging asymmetries. That's so important because every country in the basin is different and at different levels of development. And so, it should be that upstream data advantage can be there on one side, but how does that data advantage or that technical sophistication can be also harnessed by another country within the basin who probably doesn't have that sophistication. So it's also important that how do we build capacities about, because this is a very new domain, how do we build capacity so that, again, building capacity, not just technical capacity, but also beyond technology, to make sure that there is more like a holistic understanding of this approach. I'm not going to speak a lot because I think it'll be better to have more conversation. So let me conclude with like 3 quick takeaways. So I think first, the Brahmaputra's risks are increasing underwater, but we have to remember the losses are deeply social. Second, there is no doubt UDA is a powerful enabler, but governance determines whether it reduces risk or it reproduces inequality. So we have to keep in mind the governance mechanism. And third, the future of Brahmaputra cooperation lies in linking technology, trust, and justice. And so rather than treating them as separate domains, let's see if we can bring technology, trust, and justice together into one domain. If done well, UDA can help refrain the river from a site of recurring crisis to a platform for cooperative, anticipatory, and also equitable river governance. So my last line is that in the Brahmaputra basin, the challenge is, that's what I feel, is no longer whether we can see the river better, but whether we are willing to govern what we see together has always, I think, a big challenge. So I'm going to end here and over to you, Catherine. Thank you.